Headline: Ukrainian forces strike military and infrastructure targets deep inside Russia on New Year's night. January 2026. You're listening to the deepest analysis of the moment that defines the global battlefield. This deep dive is for you, the learner who needs the strategic context behind the big lines. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. I'm Alex. Join me with Aria in the latest Deep Dive by Defense Report for a sharp, no-nonsense breakdowns of the latest in global defense news, military technology, and strategic developments. And today we're going to cover the massive coordinated New Year's night strike campaign, reaching targets over 1,000 kilometers deep inside Russia, and what this means for the diplomatic path ahead in 2026.
That's right. And to really give you the full picture, we've analyzed a whole stack of sources. We're looking at the kinetic strikes themselves, the physical damage.
No, actual explosions.
The actual explosions, but also the technological evolution that's making it all possible. We're talking about things like the new Firepoint FP1 drone. And then there's this whole other layer, the information war happening in parallel.
Okay, so let's unpack this. The mission for us here is to connect those dots. I mean, how is Ukraine's growing unmanned strike capacity directly putting pressure on Russia, not just on the battlefield, but diplomatically and even at home?
Exactly. These strikes aren't just military events anymore. They are fundamentally changing Moscow's calculations, both politically and, maybe more importantly, financially.
And the year really did start with, a bang. On both sides.
It absolutely did. Russia launched a huge barrage on New Year's Eve. We're talking 205 UAVs against Ukraine.
Wow.
Yeah, and Ukrainian forces managed to neutralize 176 of them, which is an incredible interception rate. But
the real story, the one that changes the strategic map, was the response.
That's it. Ukraine launched this extensive, coordinated series of deep strikes into Russia on January 1st. The Ukrainian defense forces themselves confirmed they were hitting critical military, economic, and logistical infrastructure.
So not just random targets, this was planned.
Highly planned. And the key thing for you to understand is just the sheer breadth of the target list. Shows a huge expansion of their operational radius. We're not talking about border skirmishes anymore.
Okay, so walk us through the map. Where did they hit? Because I think the geography here really tells the story.
It does. So let's start in the south. The Ilsky oil refinery, that's in Krasnodar Krai. This is a major facility. It processes over 6 million tons of oil a year.
And why is that one so important?
It's all about logistics.
Yeah.
It feeds the Russian war machine through the Black Sea ports. The strike there caused a really big sustained fire.
So you're hitting the source. What about the supply lines themselves?
Well, they hit those two. The Ludanova oil depot in Kaluga Oblast. That's a Rosneft facility, a state-owned company. And it's a known hub for supplying Russian army units fighting in the war. They scored a direct hit on the storage tanks, caused a massive blaze.
But the one that really made everyone sit up, I think, was the strike much, much deeper into Russia.
That would be Tatarstan. You're talking about the Northern Commodity Park and the Almedivskaya oil facilities.
And just for context, how far is that?
That's over 1,000 kilometers from the border. Over 1,000.
1,000 kilometers. So, I mean, strategically, that puts almost all of European Russia's industrial base. It puts it in range.
It puts it in range. That fact alone changes Moscow's entire defensive equation. And remember, they're doing this while also hitting targets in occupied territory. They hit Donetsk airport, going after Shahed drone crews, and the Ilvaisk fuel depot. It's a multi-layered campaign.
Which brings us to the strategic logic. This isn't just harassment. What's the goal here?
The term analysts are using is industrial degradation. This is a sustained campaign. By the end of 2025, these strikes had already disrupted something like 17% of Russia's total oil refining capacity.
17%? That's a huge number.
It's about 1.1 million barrels per day. This isn't a pinprick. It's a systematic dismantling of their capacity.
So what does that do to Moscow? What kind of dilemma does that create?
It forces them into what's being called a policy dilemma. It's painful. They need refined oil for three things: to fuel the military, to keep domestic gas prices stable, and for the export revenue that funds the whole war.
And now they can't do all three.
Now they have to choose. Do you give fuel to the army and protests at home over prices? Do you prioritize the public and starve your army? It creates immense internal pressure.
And there's a technical reason this damage is so hard to fix, right? It's not just about rebuilding a tank.
No, it's much more complex. Refineries are vulnerable because of very specific components. We're talking about the atmospheric vacuum distillation units, or AVT units.
AVTs, so that's like the brain of the operation.
It's the absolute core.
Yeah.
Hitting one of those can shut down the whole facility. And here's the kicker.
Hmm.
The specialized parts to repair or replace them are almost all made in the West.
And they're cut off by sanctions.
Completely cut off. So the damage isn't temporary. It's structural. It's long-term.
And you can already see the effects of this inside Russia.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen reports of rising gas prices, regional shortages, even rationing in places like Crimea. But the biggest sign was a fiscal one on January 1st.
The VAT increase.
Exactly. Russia raised its value-added tax from 20 to 22%. And sources are very clear. This wasn't just a normal budget adjustment. This was specifically to finance the war.
So there's a direct line. A Ukrainian drone hits a refinery in Patarstan.
And a person in Moscow pays more tax. The cost of the war is being passed directly to the Russian people, partly because of this campaign.
Which brings us to the tech. This capability didn't just appear out of thin air. This is about Ukraine's own defense industry.
It's a testament to how fast it's maturing. I saw a quote from a commander. His call sign is Charlie. He's with the first separate unmanned systems center. He said 95% of his unit's long-range systems are domestically produced now.
95%. That's a massive shift towards self-sufficiency.
It is. And it's been institutionalized. This isn't just a bunch of volunteer groups anymore. They have the Unmanned Systems Forces, the USF, as a formal branch of the military.
And a great example of that is the Birds of Magyar unit, right?
Yeah.
Their story is pretty amazing.
It's a perfect case study. Robert Brovdy founded it in 2022 as just a small volunteer recon group. In 3 years, it evolved into a Marine Corps battalion, and by late 2025, it became a full brigade within the USF. That's an incredible rate of growth and professionalization.
So what's the actual hardware they're using? What's the workhorse for these 1,000-kilometer strikes?
The main platform seems to be the Firepoint FP1 drone. And if you look at the specs, you see why it's so effective. It has a 1,500-kilometer range, carries a 120-kilogram warhead,
Okay.
and it costs about $55,000.
$55,000. That's, I mean, you compare that to the cost of the air defense missile Russia has to use to try and shoot it down?
The cost exchange is just brutal for Russia. They're spending millions on a missile to stop a drone that costs less than a luxury car. It's asymmetrical warfare at its best.
And it's not just the FP1. They have other systems, a whole layered approach.
Right. They're using the Luudi drone, which has about a 1,000-kilometer range. But what's really clever is the use of mothership UAVs.
Motherships. So what does that mean?
They use a larger drone to carry smaller FPV drones deep behind enemy lines. These small FPVs are connected by fiber optic cable, making them super resistant to electronic warfare. They can extend their effective range up to 50 or 60 kilometers.
So you fly the big drone in, then release the smaller, harder-to-jam drones for the final attack on a specific target.
Precisely. It's incredibly smart. And this success has bred a lot of confidence. That same commander, Charlie, predicted that a night where 1,000 Ukrainian drones attack Russia, he said that could be very soon in 2026.
1,000 in one night? It's incredible. And all of this is happening while this high-stakes diplomatic game is playing out, complete with its own information war.
Yeah, the New Year's period saw a huge escalation there. Russia claimed this massive drone attack. They said 91 drones on Putin's residence in Valdai.
And they immediately labeled it a terrorist attack.
Of course, it was a clear attempt to paint Ukraine as a terrorist state to justify hardening their own position in any future peace talks.
But the whole story started to fall apart pretty quickly.
It really did. International fact-checkers, and there were even reports of a CIA briefing to President Trump, they all concluded the attack on the residence just didn't happen.
So drones were in the area, but they weren't targeting him.
Exactly. Drones were operating in the Novgorod region, which again confirms Ukraine's range, but they were hitting legitimate military targets far from his home.
And the numbers the Russians used didn't even add up.
Not at all. First, the Ministry of Defense said 41 drones. Then Foreign Minister Lavrov suddenly says 91. And there was no proof, no local reports of fires, no verifiable wreckage. It was, as President Zelensky said, a lie designed to derail peace talks.
And despite that, the diplomatic track is moving forward. It seems Ukraine's position is pretty firm.
It's very firm, and it's based on past failures. Zelensky said Ukraine wants peace, but not a weak one. He specifically rejected a Budapest-style piece of paper, or a Minsk-style meticulously drafted trap.
It's basically saying no more empty promises.
Exactly. The Budapest Memorandum gave them assurances, but no enforcement. The Minsk agreements were a trap designed to give Russia control. He says a new deal is 90% ready, but that last 10% is all about real, ironclad security guarantees.
And key allies are backing that position.
They are. The coalition of the willing, including France and Germany, is pushing hard. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff has been talking about a 15-year security guarantee, which is substantial.
So what's next on that front?
Well, there's a meeting of national security advisors in Ukraine on January 3rd, and there's a leaders' summit planned in France on January 6th to formalize their counterproposal to Russia. So things are moving fast.
So to sum it all up, the start of 2026 is this parallel track. On one side, you have this kinetic war being driven by incredible drone technology.
Right. And those deep strikes are causing real economic pain, forcing Russia to make hard choices like that VAT increase.
And on the other track, you have this accelerating diplomacy where Ukraine is negotiating from a position of technological and strategic strength.
That's the perfect summary. The success of drones, like the FP1, is what's giving them that leverage.
Now, here is a final provocative thought for you to consider as you reflect on this deep dive. The success of Ukraine's domestically produced, low-cost FP1 drone campaign is forcing Russia to divert scarce air defense assets away from the front lines to protect distant industrial hubs across 1,000 kilometers of territory. If Ukraine can sustain this pressure, effectively leveraging asymmetrical unmanned technology to force a strategic distribution of Russian air defenses, does this mark the point where advanced, cheaper USF technology prominently surpasses the strategic value of traditional high-cost conventional missile arsenals in modern warfare?
That was a deep dive into the expanding strike campaign and the strategic context shaping 2026.
You've been listening to Defense Report by Alex and Arya, where we analyze the latest in military strategy, global defense, and advanced weaponry. Final reminder. Subscribe to Defense Reports, your go-to source for timely, in-depth military and defense reports. We'll catch you next time.